believe they can't sleep.
It's time to listen to Courtney at last on the Ramblings of an Insomniac podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Ramblings of an Insomniac. I am Courtney. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Hey, and thank you, you and you and you and you in the back row for listening. If this is your first time or your 100th time, I super appreciate you tuning in. There are many people, almost everybody has a podcast now. So there are a million options to choose from. And the fact that you took your time and energy to intentionally listen to me it means a lot. That is freaking awesome. You rock. You rock my socks from my head to my toes, and I super appreciate you. So thank you. All right. Things keeping me up. My son and I got into this really good in-depth conversation last night about prison and crime and the consequences and how different countries handle, punishment differently and what does prison actually do. And I know here in the States, prison reform is, it's not good. There's something like I should have done my stats before I even started, but I know that prison does no good, at least here in the United States. It doesn't, the reoffense rate is very high. It's like in the 70 percentile. And I'm like, well, why is that? And one thing I do firmly believe, one thing that really bothers me is we definitely need to have much better mental health availability for people. People need to have access to counselors and psychiatrists at a very young age, because then we won't need prisons. Well, we'll still need prisons, obviously. We still need prisons, and there'll still be criminals, and there'll still be messed up people and all of that, even with the best counselors and most loving parents that didn't get divorced. And if you suffered no abuse whatsoever, even, all of that, there's still going to be people out there that are going to, unfortunately, commit heinous crimes. But I genuinely feel it starts at the ground level. Getting access, having everybody have access to counseling and having things diagnosed at an early age, or getting counseling and medication or homeopathic remedies, whatever it is, at an early age. And getting diagnosed at an early age so that later on you don't go to prison. However, that said, let's say you do go to prison. As much as I firmly believe in deporting illegal aliens, as much as I firmly believe people that come to this country illegally should be deported back to their own country, I see these prisons, and when they're stacked 80 to one cell, and they are, nose to nose with each other, and, you strip them of all their humanity and you feed them food that's really not even edible, food that's expired. I know for sure that happens because I know people who have gone to federal prisons for 3 to 5 years, and I know the type of food that is served to them. And here's what I have a problem with. Either you feel this person has committed such heinous crimes that they deserve the death penalty. And I don't mean death penalty as you sit on death row for years and years, wasting taxpayers' money, wasting space in a cell. It doesn't make any sense to just sit there for years on death row. It quite literally depletes our taxpayers' money, and it takes up space, valuable space that we need. So I say, if you have been sentenced to death, then you die a month later. Get your affairs in order. Now, the death penalty is something I have talked about on my podcast before. I am for and against it. It's not a black and white thing for me. Just like abortion is not a black and white thing for me. I think there's a real gray area. I believe in the death penalty if the person admits that they committed this crime and really, really, we know for sure that they have done this crime. But if someone is just, up and down, swearing up and down they didn't commit the crime, and there's like, there's not a whole lot of evidence that they got, convicted on. It's like, do we really want to sentence that person to death? But there's a lot that goes into it. But the point is, if you do sentence someone to death, then okay, then they die. However, if you decide that they deserve prison and not death, don't put them in prison only to treat them like cockroaches, only to treat them like absolute lesser humans. Of course, they did something wrong. And of course, they don't deserve a, country club. They don't deserve to have like, you know, people fanning them and feeding them grapes and eating, filet mignon. But you don't need to feed expired food. You don't need to stack people 80 to one teeny prison to where they're nose to nose. Like that doesn't do anything. All you're going to do now is piss people off even more, make them resentful. You're not going to suddenly make them go, I mean, you're going to, yes, there are going to be people who are like, wow, I don't want to do that again. However, most people in there are gang members. And unfortunately, what I have a problem with is there are a lot of people that are gang members that probably didn't have a choice other than to be a gang member. Because usually, if you're born into a family who are all gangbangers, you're now going to be the same. You're also going to be part of that gang that your parents or your uncle or whatever your family is a part of. You don't necessarily have a say. And that's again where I have a problem. It's like some of these people probably don't want to be doing what they're doing. They probably don't want to be in a gang. But if they try to get out, they die. So don't put them in a prison where you're not going to reform them. What does that do, stacking people in a prison to feed them shit food and make them, in such close quarters that, especially on hot days and the humidity, and now, you're stripping them of all their dignity. I guess my point is, why not just kill them then? If you're going to treat them like disgusting, lesser humans that are cockroaches, then maybe don't put them in prison. Maybe just kill them then, because to me, you're no better than they are. You're torturing people. And don't get me wrong, there are some people in this world that I think deserve to be tortured. People like serial killers or killers that have tortured their victims and have made their victims suffer. Trust me, I feel those people deserve to die in the same exact manner that they killed someone. I think if you kill someone, if you strangled them, you get strangled. If you brutally rape them and then kill them with like a blunt object, that's how you die, which is sadistic. And I know, the whole eye for an eye and we'd all be blind. I get it. But I'm sorry. But then we got into this whole conversation of, God, what sucks is some people didn't really stand a chance. There are people in this world that ended up being pedophiles. I'm not condoning pedophilia. I'm not at all condoning what pedophiles do at all. I'm just saying I feel bad for those that grew up being sexually abused themselves. And some people have had absolute horrific, horrific stories of mutilation and molestation and rape from a family member or, over and over by a family member. And they've also had abuse, physical abuse on top of that. And if that's all they've ever known and that's all they grew up around, can you blame them for turning around and doing the same to others? Again, not condoning it, not saying it's okay. I don't think it's okay. I'm not giving them a pass. I'm just saying I have empathy for people. I have empathy for people, and I feel that a lot of these people that commit crimes, that kill, that rape, that molest, that rob, banks or whatever, they come from such a horrific background that it's like, Jesus, they didn't even stand a freaking chance. Like, what did you expect out of them? They didn't have anybody there to teach them the right thing to do. Nobody that they trusted, no one that loved them, no one that paid attention to them in any other way than molesting them or beating them. And so throwing them in prison isn't really going to do any good. Again, I'm not trying to say that rapists and murderers and pedophiles should be out in public. I'm just saying that prison isn't necessarily going to fix it. So then I look at places like Norway and Finland that do things where prisoners go to jail and they go to prison and they earn their own money and they grow their own food and they go grocery shopping and they learn how to pay their taxes. They learn how to, I can't say balance a checkbook, but balance their account, balance their funds, manage their money. They learn to care for like a dog and train a dog. They learn to garden and grow their own food. They can take classes. They can go to counseling. They have access to counseling. They have access to jobs, learning how to make things and stuff. And then their reoffense rate is something like 17%. Again, I need to look up these statistics. I'm not giving you factual statistics. I'm giving you the ballpark, what I looked at from my memory, but it's in that realm of 17%. And I'm like, well, clearly they're doing something right because again, I'm not saying that you should have access to, organic foods and all of that, but I am also saying, but maybe you should if you're growing it yourself and you're the one putting the work into it and you're the one gardening and tilling the soil and planting the seeds and watering it. We're not paying for it then. I mean, sure, we're paying for the water, we're paying for the seeds, but they're doing the work. Why can't we use more people to do more than just litter cleanup? Show prisoners how to fix potholes, how to fix drywall, do like a trade school kind of thing. Put people in like a witness protection basically for gang members that maybe they don't want to be out of prison because they've got comfortable in prison and they don't want to be back out around, maybe they don't want to go killing people anymore. So we just got into a really long conversation about prison, at least here in America, and that it really doesn't do any good and how it's breaking my heart to see these people being deported back into prisons like the one in El Salvador that just are, in my eyes, in my view, just my opinion. Um, Again, I know you're a criminal, but either kill people and put people to death and sentence them to death, or put them in prison and actually try to rehabilitate. Don't treat people like cockroaches. I just have a problem with that. People always ask me how I can forgive others for things that people have done to me, and there have been people in my past that have done some really, really horrendous things, and um, I just learned from my counselor that forgiving does not mean forgetting or condoning. And when you carry around all that hate, as they say, it just eats up your soul. It wastes my time. It wastes my energy. The other person probably doesn't care. And even if they do care, me spending all that time directing so much hate and anger towards someone is still not accomplishing anything. I'm not saying I need to be nice to that person or I need to go out and talk to that person or I need to say that I'm condoning what that person did or said. But forgiving and kind of just moving forward is actually for me. It's not for them. So when people commit crimes, I'm not trying to say again that what they did was okay, or I just feel like there's always a story. There was a story that I watched on Netflix about a kid, a white kid that was like middle class, and he shot his dad, admitted that he shot his dad. It wasn't up for debate if he shot his dad. He admitted that he did it. And immediately, every fucking news media, because, fake news, shady fucking news, God forbid they actually report facts or statistics or the news. They made it out to be that this privileged white kid killed his dad because he didn't get what he wanted, because his dad didn't give him all the things he wanted. So he was just a spoiled, rotten, privileged white kid who just basically threw a temper tantrum and shot his dad. And I'm always the one that's like, well, why did he shoot his dad? Again, not saying that, man, maybe his dad, deserved to die. I'm not saying that, but I'm like, I wonder what prompted that. I'm always trying to get into people's put the shoe on the other foot, and be the devil's advocate and be like, well, I wonder what the whole story is. I've never been one to follow around just what other people say. Even when I went to church, I was the annoying kid that's like, but why? That doesn't make sense. I'm always trying to piece together things and see what makes sense and see, again, I love photography because it's all angles, all perspective, all points of view. I love I love photographing things from that no one else may think is cool, like a corn on the cob, an old corn on the cob. I did a really cool picture of a really old corn on the cob laying on the ground once. And I did a picture of a twisted piece of metal on the ground. But I like that kind of stuff because I love being like, this is an old corn on the cob. I did an old banana peel once. And I was like, even a banana peel, I like to look at all angles and see the beauty in it and see something good in it. And so with people, my favorite things I watch are documentaries and biographies. And I love watching reality TV and I love snooping out my window and watching people and people watching because people are just so fucking fascinating. It's way better than watching scripted TV to me, in my opinion. I rarely ever watch scripted TV. I do. I have shows that I like, but I usually try to watch documentaries or things like how it's made or how the states got their shapes or just like mega ships, but just also biographies. I love biographies because people are fascinating. So point is when you see people being treated like lower than scum and they're cramming a million people into a cell and stripping them of all their dignity, I'm like, did you just teach them a lesson or did you just piss them off? Are you helping? Like, what are you contributing by doing that? I don't know. Just a thought. We got on a pretty long, um, we had a long discussion about that. And I don't know. I don't know where you guys stand. Like, what do you think? Is that, when you go to, and also, again, one size doesn't fit all. One shoe doesn't fit everybody. There's people out there who maybe all they need is maybe they need like that drill sergeant beat you down to build you back up kind of thing. Some people need that. Some people that works. Some people when they go into the military and they've got someone screaming and yelling in their face and they're trying to, break them down to build them back up. That works for a lot of people. I personally, if someone got in my face and started screaming at me, I would want to throat punch them. I've grown up with people with abuse and people screaming and yelling in my face. And if you get in my bubble, I will I'll want to rip out your jugular. So, you know, um, it doesn't work for everybody. Just like prison doesn't work for everybody. Just like college doesn't work for everybody. You know, one size doesn't fit all. And I do know that it definitely starts with when you're young, having access to mental health. And it starts with having parents that aren't divorced. It starts with having a mom and a dad and having some type of faith. It doesn't have to be in God, but just faith in humanity or God or something greater than yourself. Because narcissism has ran rampant around here. Look at Katy Perry. Look at Oprah. Look at Beyonce. Look at those yahoos. Look at Hollywood. I was watching this not TikTok, this Instagram video of like home videos from people in the 80s. And it was like high school in 1987, and this person's going around videotaping, and almost every single person put up their hand and like hid their face, like, no, no, don't videotape me. I'm shy. I'm humble. You know, I don't need the limelight. And I'm like, man, those were the days because nowadays everyone's fighting over the limelight. Everybody is hogging the limelight and scratching and clawing to get a piece of the limelight, to be on social media and get that viral video. But in the 80s, it was kind of like, hey, don't look at me. Of course, there's people that, there's always going to be people that like the limelight. And I'm not knocking that. If you like having attention, that's fantastic. If you like, being the star center stage, hey, you do you. That's amazing. but it was just nice to see younger people being like, no, it's okay. I don't need this attention. It's refreshing. It was nostalgic for sure. So that's keeping me up. I think deporting is great. I'm getting really sick and tired. I've said this way before um, a lot of people that are just now saying this, but I've been saying for years, like years and years, getting real tired of people being like, "Oh my God, the Trump administration is ripping apart children away from their families, taking children away from their families." No, that's not at all what's happening. What's happening is illegal aliens chose to come to this country illegally, knowing full well that it was illegal and knowing the consequences, knowing that if you take your children across the border and you know it's illegal and you know you could get deported, that means that you knowingly made the conscious decision to drag your children on this little trek, this illegal trek of yours. You made them accomplices in your criminal activity and you drug them across the border. Now, Trump said, hey, go ahead, take your children back. They're your children. We're not going to keep you away from your children. Take your children back to Mexico. And if they're choosing to say, no, I'm going to keep my child here, that is not Trump ripping family members apart. That's not Trump tearing family members apart. That is a parent making a really poor decision and being a bad parent. If I choose to rob a bank and I have children, if I have minor children and I choose to rob a bank or kill somebody or drink and drive and I commit, and I murder somebody, I know that I now have committed a crime that is going to land me in prison. And I know that means that my children will not have a parent, will not have a mom. Now my children no longer have a mom because I did a crime and now I have consequences for that. So I won't see my kids. I don't blame the government for that. It is not the government's fault that I knowingly chose to knock over a convenience store. It's just so, literally Trump can't do anything, cannot do anything without the left just thinking it's shitty. If he would have had the parent, again, it's up to the parent. It's not up to Trump. Trump has no say in if the parent takes their child back to Mexico or not. That's a parental decision. If the parent chooses not to take the child back to Mexico and says, "Hey, my kid's going to stay here with, their father who is legal or whatever," that's the parent's choice. That's nothing to do with Trump. But if the parent would have, if the child would have stayed in the US, it'd be like, oh, Trump's ripping children apart. And then if the child goes back to whatever country they came from with the parent, it's, oh, Trump is now kicking out children. Like, no matter what, the guy can't win. It's just stupid. Everything the left does is violent and uneducated and malicious, and it's insane. Therapy needs to be implemented. It's getting just so out of hand and it's just exhausting. It's really exhausting. People need to get a life. I wish people cared this much about actual things like sex trafficking, like kids that get drug across the border from the cartel, like kids being murdered and raped and abused, like animals being abused and animals being used in fight rings, like people that are starving in other countries, like people that don't have access to water and healthcare in other countries. Those are things to care about. Like the fact that our soil and our land, no one is, people talk about the environment, and they talk about air. What about the soil? What about the land? We're running out of land. We're running out of soil. Even our fruits and vegetables aren't healthy anymore, barely, because we've had to till the ground so much that we're tilling up all of that good soil. Every time we till up the soil, we're losing nutrients. Care about stuff like that? Why are we caring about if transgenders can go into a female bathroom? Why are we caring if Trump wore a navy blue suit, which, by the way, he was not the only one. It was a cropped photo. A cropped photo. If you see the whole photo, other people were wearing blue suits. And also, who gives a fuck? Who cares what color of suit Trump was wearing to the Pope's funeral? The Pope was a piece of shit, anyways. I've said this before, by the way. Sorry, I probably just pissed off a lot of Catholics, but oh well, I can have my opinion. The Pope didn't do anything. Um, and I'm not Catholic, and plus I don't know the guy. So why do I care if he died? Again, I care because I'm an empathetic person. And if people die, it's like, wow, a human died. That's a bummer. But I'm not going to cry over someone I've never met in my entire life, just like his family and him aren't going to cry if me or anybody in my family dies. They're not going to lose any sleep. They don't know me. They've never met me. I'm not Catholic, never met the Pope. And actually, from what I hear, he wasn't the best anyway. So, again, sorry he died, but I don't really give a shit. I can still go on with my life because I don't know him. And that may make me sound like a bitch, but does anyone care if I die? No, except my family and people that know me. So my friends and family are going to care, but Katy Perry's not going to give a shit if I die. Madonna's not going to care if I die. The president's not going to care if I die. I mean, again, you might care on the level of, wow, this is a human being. I'm not sad if a human being dies. I care very much when an animal dies. If I didn't know the animal, I very much care about animals dying when I don't know them. But humans, if I don't know them, I'm not going to care about. And if a child dies, I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to feel horrible for that parent. I'm going to feel horrible for that child. And I'm going to think that someone dying, especially being murdered, and especially a child, is very, very sad. And I'm going to feel sorrow for their family. And I'm going to be like, wow, that's really awful. But I don't know these people. And I didn't know the Pope. So I don't give a shit if Trump wore blue. It's not a disrespectful thing, clearly, because if there was something saying that he had to wear black, he would have worn black. I guarantee you. If there was protocol on what color you're supposed to wear, he would have worn it. Clearly, there wasn't protocol. People just wear black to funerals, which I think is weird, but whatever. I think funerals are weird. Funerals are just bizarre to me. I get like celebrating the life of someone, but I want someone to party. I want there to be a big party and people be like, remember this time? And talk about all the dumb shit I said and did and like have a party, not be sitting around crying and wearing all black. That's so depressing. And I get me dying is going to be sad for people, but I don't want people sitting around wearing black and like crying. And I'd rather people be like, remember this dumb shit thing she said and did? Remember that time when she was a moron, you know? Or talking about good things that I did or whatever, but you don't need to gather around. In fact, there doesn't even need to be a gathering. I don't even want there to be a gathering. I mean, if people want to do that, that's fine. I'm dead. What do I care? I'm not going to care. But certainly, if there was some type of dress code, I assure you, the President of the United States would have worn whatever it said to wear. So clearly there wasn't. And I look at it as more of a wow, way to be different, way to be unique, way to not be a sheeple like the left. Bah! That should be like their mating call. They just go outside going bah, 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 and they're like, oh, another leftist. We must get together and procreate other idiots. Yes, let's procreate and make more morons. Or it could be like when Beyonce sings, it sounds like a cow in heat or a cat in heat. That could also be like you could just go outside and blast Beyonce, and then all the lefties come running. Yes, yes, what? It's our bat signal. It's our Beyonce. It's our bay signal. It's our bay signal. Let's all gather together. I don't know, because they sound the same to me. Anyway, those are some things on my mind. Those are some things that I have been thinking about, and it's preventing me from sleeping. I'm over all the crazy. The good thing is I did get to go on a hike out toward Hood River by by Multnomah Falls. If you're not from Oregon, look up Multnomah Falls and the gorge and the Cascade Lock area and all the falls around there. It's beautiful. It's very pretty. I went out there with my son and my grandson and went on a hike, and it was great. It was lovely. And today is probably like 60 degrees outside. It's cloudy as heck, but there's some blue sticking out, and the birds are chirping. So I'm going to leave things on a good note. I really try. There's some birds out bathing in a little puddle because it rained this morning. There's some birds out just sitting there going crazy in a puddle. It's pretty adorable. So I'm going to end with thank you so much for listening. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a partner, tell a coworker, tell everybody. Again, if you want to listen to me because it helps you sleep, if you want to listen to me because you're using it to torture somebody else, I don't care, whatever you're listening to me. I mean, I don't want you to torture somebody else, but if you want to listen to me for whatever your reason is, I appreciate it so stinking much. Thank you. And remember to control what you can, let the rest go. Remember to breathe. Remember to take a breath, and remember just to try to think of one positive thing that you can focus on to get you forward and moving forward in the day. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.